Welcome to Beyond Revenue, Narratives of Revenue Leaders. Chris, thank you very much for joining the show. I'm very excited that you're here. You started actually your career in research, I have seen,
Yes.
moved to business development, and then have a long way back in sales and revenue operations, with now leading as head of revenue operations at ultimate.ai, the entire revenue operations team. But over to you. Maybe you want to introduce yourself. Who are you and what are your responsibilities at ultimate.ai?
First and foremost, thank you so much for having me and for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here today. And yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm Chris Simmons. I am from the US, but have been living in Berlin for 15 years almost. So I moved in 2008, just after college.
Nice.
Did not intend on staying 15 years in Europe, but here I am. Um, and yeah, my background actually is in research. I was a research assistant when I first moved to Berlin, and I worked at a small consulting firm that was actually just purchased a CRM system. It was called Act CRM or Act On, I think. And that was kind of my introduction into CRM. I was entering data into the system, everything very manual. But quickly moved on to my next role in sales development at Search Metrics, and quickly had the opportunity from the sales development role to move into my first junior CRM role, which happened because we had actually purchased Salesforce, but we didn't have a manager or anybody looking after Salesforce. And I had just written my master's thesis about how to implement CRM at a SaaS tech company. So I guess I was in the right place at the right time. And yeah, so I started as a junior CRM manager and kind of worked my way up. I think at the time before RevOps, we were calling it SMOps, so sales and marketing operations. And now, yeah, heading up the revenue operations team at Ultimate. And honestly, it's been such a journey and it has evolved over the years that I've been doing it, but it's been amazing and a lot of fun. So, yeah, that's my background.
Cool. Perfect. Thanks for that, and nice to have you. Maybe you give us a quick introduction. What is Ultimate AI doing? And on the other side, what are your responsibilities exactly, and why is your role important for your organization?
Yeah, so Ultimate is actually in the AI space, and we have developed a virtual agent platform, and it has really kicked off. And we have customers all over the globe. And honestly, with RevOps, and they brought me in to kind of manage all of the growth and also bridge the gap across the different teams. So I think before I started, there was a lot of tendencies to have like siloed. So you have like the marketing team and then maybe the customer support team and the sales team all working to kind of support the customer, but not really working together collectively as such. So the idea of bringing in a RevOps leader was really just to bridge the gap across those three teams, streamline the processes, implement the correct technology, make sure everybody's understanding and measured by the same KPIs. So it's been really fun to bridge that gap and also build up this functionality at Ultimate. And I can definitely see after 2.5 years of being here, the impact that we've had from where we originally first started. So it's been a lot of fun.
Nice, interesting. And you, as a revenue operations leader, who do you report to?
So right now, I'm reporting into our VP of sales, but typically we'll report into the CRO. So the idea is usually that you want to have a CRO or somebody who's more neutral to the go-to-market and not just focused on the sales team. So right
Okay.
now, focus is a VP of sales, but actually there will be likely a dotted line in the future if we get our CRO in place. In the past, I've reported to CEOs. I've also reported to the COO. I've also reported to CFO. And
Interesting.
so,
Every organization is a little bit different, right?
exactly,
How they
exactly.
set up their organization structure. But let's go a little bit. Let's dive a little bit into into the roles. How do you make sure as revenue operations that the roles work hand in hand, that they are, work on one aligned customer journey? What is the daily operation, or what is the KPIs you set as well there to really hold it together for your team?
Good question. I It's reminding me to like when I first started at Ultimate, and I can see the silo setup, like I was saying before. And the first thing that we really wanted to do was to set up company goals and targets across sales, marketing, and CS that everybody was working towards and that everybody understood. And that was really
Mhm.
helpful so people could understand, okay, this is kind of my part and this is how my roll up into this company target. So really just setting clear goals and KPIs across the different teams and managing it that way. Um, and yeah, it's definitely been a little bit of a change of pace. I think the company usually, when I started the company, was more sales focused, I would say. So I think like getting that unity across the marketing, sales, and CS teams was definitely, I won't say a challenge, but it was definitely, there was some work to be done there. But the benefits have been great because we're all speaking now the same language. And when it comes
Nice.
to reporting, we have a better or more visibility into the metrics that are most important for us. So for us, we're really looking at um, our input across like sales, so SDR, account executives, but then also marketing and partnerships. In each of these focus areas, we've given a target to, and and so with that target, every team knows, okay, this is my expectation with regards to how much pipeline I should deliver in this respective quarter. And so it just holds people accountable.
Thank you for this. What are the main, let's say, metrics per team? What is the main KPI you have for the different team set? So what's the, so they're all working on towards revenue, and then what are the, or what's the main KPI everybody has in general?
So definitely attainment. We're looking at. I think actually just taking a step back, like one KPI that was really important for us recently in the last 2 quarters, and that I was really measured on, that I think um, might not come up as much, was really the time to first meeting. So we were seeing
Hmm.
in our business that we have our tier ones, so people who have directly contacted us, and then maybe our tier twos, who are people who've maybe downloaded like a case study or something on our website, and we're handling all those streams very differently. And we noticed that we wanted to speed up the time to the first meeting because we were seeing that people were dropping
Hmm.
off or that we weren't fast enough to respond to all of those prospects. And therefore, that was impacting our win rates and our conversion rates down the line. So the time to first meeting was one of the first KPIs that we were really looking at on an SDR and sales on a sales
Hmm.
level. But then, of course, really important for us is measuring conversion rates across the whole funnel and across the whole journey. And then, of course, our win rates per segment, per user, per team. I would also say CSAT for our customers. So not just that it's about sales, but also like our customer, measuring our customer happiness, our NPS. And net dollar retention, I would say, is also really important for us. So anything from time to first meeting all the way through net dollar retention are the KPIs that we're really looking at.
Interesting. And do you check as well, between, so the dependencies between the role along the customer journey, and do you measure capacity? Is this a topic you look at, or is it pure conversion rate and sales cycles?
So capacity, as in capacity planning, I'm assuming we're talking for sure. So
Yeah.
capacity planning for us is definitely huge, and a joint effort, I would say, across like management, finance, RevOps, maybe even at the forefront RevOps. And for us, it's mostly a top-down approach, I would say, um,
Hmm.
in which we're looking at, we have our company targets that were set a lot of times from our board or from our investors, and working backwards to understand, okay, what is our average ACV per rep, as well as what are our win rates per team, and then using kind of basic math to understand, okay, if our company targets are XYZ, our average ACV is X, and our win rates per rep is this, then we probably need this to hire for our sales capacity. But it's not just, I guess, for us about the
Hmm.
sales roles, but like I think many organizations I've seen have made the mistake of only focusing on the sales capacity planning and not also on the
Absolutely.
supportive role. So for us, we're really looking at not just that we have like we're bringing in and closing deals, but then of course what happens to our customer support team as well. So it's
Yes,
really managing both
absolutely.
sides of this through a top down approach. I would also say we look at um, the historical data to an extent as well to really understand like past performance when putting together like when we're putting together different modeling. But for the capacity planning, basically it's a top down approach in which sales see us. We're really looking planning the sales capacity roles, but then also the after sales support capacity roles.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think it's a very important thing as well because it's what I've seen as well that we forget the post-close one teams and the capacity there is crucial, right? So they can actually handle the new signed deals and handle the customers in general to really support them along the way. And I think right they're running quite fast full, yeah, because they taking care of them on the long term and not only for onboarding. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice, cool that you look at this.
It's almost like that customer journey. I mean, you think about part of this journey, you bring on in the next 6 months 10 new salespeople. You have to consider also the ramp time. How long does it take? I don't know what your sales cycle is. For us, it depends on the segment that we're in, but you don't want to bring in too many salespeople who are ramped up, bringing in business, which is great, but then you don't have anybody there to support or onboard them as customers, and then
Absolutely.
quickly they churn. So it really is kind of finding that mixture between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you think? What role does technology play in building really this just described robust revenue architecture, right? Where you have the role along the customer journey, and they need to work hand in hand. What's your opinion and on that?
I mean, for me, technology is like one of the most important pieces. It's also maybe where I'm the most interested in. That's my background. And so I feel technology has a huge impact on the success of RevOps. Um, I think I see it as really the infrastructure, the foundation to success. And I see a lot
Mm,
of companies potentially investing too late in their tech stack or in the resources necessary to manage the tech stack. Or I see on the opposite side, you have your, your dedicated, beloved CRM admin or your Salesforce or HubSpot admin, who then is kind of the jack of all trades and companies want that person to manage the administration side, but then also manage the whole revenue lifecycle side, which isn't really possible. So I think for me, it's really important that companies are investing properly in the tech stack, not just on the technology, because there's some technologies more expensive than others, but also on the resources needed to manage the technologies as well.
fair. And what would you say when you think about it? Right, you have done a couple of new CRM systems implementations or general tech
Yeah.
decisions. What are your most important learnings on this side? So, how should I select the right tool stack? How do I implement it? What are pitfalls here you can share, especially from the revenue operations side? I think it's quite interesting to really dive into this topic a little bit more.
Sure. First and foremost, I mean, I've been at organizations where the tech decisions have been made outside of the go to market purely based on maybe cost. And that's a huge
Mm,
mistake. So, like for me, that's definitely a no go. I think the most important thing you can do if find yourself in a position of joining a company and everybody's talking Salesforce or everybody's talking about HubSpot and when to move, I think the first thing is like let's get everybody in a room or let's meet with the individual stakeholders, collect the requirements and understanding the pain. Really, what is it that we want to achieve as an
mm,
organization? And then finding the right tool that is appropriate for that. And for us, I mean, I've been in organizations where we've invested in Salesforce maybe too early and didn't invest in having all of the resources along that goes with that. So having an admin, maybe even a developer in-house who can really move quickly with all of the things that are necessary. Um, and then you just have a
mm,
messy CRM. The other side is maybe you decide to go with maybe a more cost-effective CRM as a start, and like HubSpot, for example. And then once your company knows their secret sauce or what's working for them, then you might be willing to invest in maybe a bigger, more expensive system like Salesforce to where you can invest in more resources. So I think there's also a bit of planning involved, but like the first thing I would ever do going into an organization is really understanding what is the pain, what is it that we want to achieve, and then gathering the requirements and kind of working backwards from there. I don't think that one size fits all. So I would not just say in the next organization, we're going to use Salesforce or we're going to use HubSpot or we're going to use this, even though I have my preferences. I think it really is about getting in there and rolling up your sleeves and understanding the pain and what it is that we want to achieve as an organization, and then selecting the CRM
Yeah,
or the tool, not just.
totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree here. I think this, as I cannot say it often enough, and I think I have said it quite often in this podcast. This tool have no need on its own.
Yeah,
All right, so buying a tool based on price, is just not the right way. I totally agree. It's you define the requirements, and then you just select the tool which fits to the requirements, and then you bring to life the requirements. And I think this is really crucial. It's definitely not one tool fits all. It's more, hey, what do we need to, what do we want to achieve? What is the goal? What are the motions?
100%.
And then let's select the right tool stack. So totally agree with you here. So maybe you can share one learning from your side. What is one big mistake you have done in your career? Maybe now in your current position as a lead of an entire RevOps team, where you said, look, this was one big mistake which I did wrong, and I learned this from that, and maybe the audience can learn from the wrong decision and have the prevention models in the future.
You know, like I'm the first thing that came out is not actually in my current role, so I hope that's not okay. But the first thought is like
That's totally
in my
okay.
in
No
my
worries.
last role, I kind of hinted at this a little bit, that we let the decision on the tech stack was made outside of the go-to-market, or it was made outside of the RevOps team, and was made purely at the time by our CFO, and it was made based off of cost.
Mhm.
So like we were using Salesforce at the time, and then like I said, there was at that time when I joined the company, there was no manager, there was no admin, there was no developer, there was nobody there to manage that. And as you know, Michael, like you definitely need that to get the most out of the tool and to support your team. And so our CFO was like, okay, well, looking at the numbers as a CFO does, this just we're not getting the value out of this. So he made the decision just to cut the tool, cut the cost, and go with a different tool. And honestly, that was when I was moved into that role. And I would say we were working kind of backwards for many years as a result. We didn't have uniformity. I mean, we didn't have a good integration with our core systems. We didn't have good data. We didn't have the tight processes. It was kind of all over the place. And ultimately, years later, I then made the decision with that same manager to go back to Salesforce. And it cost us a year's time to really implement Sales Cloud, CPQ with all of the users, all the contracts and everything, all the growth that our business had made over the 7 or 8 years since we had made that switch. So you lose a lot. And I would say going back to my earlier self, I definitely would have pushed harder that we don't make that decision based on cost, and that we really actually take a step back and get everybody together in a room and really understand, okay, what is it that we want to achieve? Okay, so this is what we want to achieve. It sounds like we actually have the right system in place. Let's like figure out together what we can do from our operational standpoint to actually get us
Yeah.
there, as opposed to just like rip and replacing, because that didn't resolve anything. So that would be
Yeah, and it's fair. It's good learning and a good sharing of this learning, because I totally see your point, right? Because I believe software cost is just one topic. What is the lost or potential of revenue, the inefficiency, the slowness of change, the change, everything, all this. There are a lot of other costs connected, which then most probably result in a much deeper loss than just the couple of or the cost you had for the software.
yeah,
So I think changing the software should be, so selecting or changing should be a very well thought of procedure, and it should be based on requirements. It's the only way you can do it properly. And I would say, you said there should be a little bit planning involved. I guess there should be a
a
lot
lot of
planning
planning
involved.
involved.
It should, without over engineering, of course, but I believe the companies who better structure their go-to-market and invest into structuring it, planning it, and then implementing and training the people, which this company is going to be the ones which are going to be really successful, right? These companies are going to make the difference. So thanks for sharing this learning. One question I have: what do you see from your experience from the revenue operation side? What is a common misconception about revenue leadership? What do you see their companies do completely wrong, or maybe act on? Obviously, each company is different and should define their own structures and processes. But what is a common misconception you see in the market?
That we are just a Salesforce admin, or that we're just a CRM admin and kind of this jack of all trades. I've seen it so much from my network of like RevOps leaders or RevOps people growing into RevOps leadership positions, and like a lot of the journeys are very much the same to mine. Like, you were in the right place at the right time. You were a junior admin, and now all of a sudden you're a sales and marketing ops manager or whatever. And I
Mm,
think that, or the common misconception is that like everybody is just this dedicated CRM, Salesforce admin and not really capable to get a seat at the table. When in actuality, yes, a lot of us have this background in tech similar to mine, but what we know is like when you work in CRM, you have access to the entire business. I mean, you're working with stakeholders across sales,
yeah,
finance,
absolutely.
marketing, partnerships, everybody. So
Can totally relate to this.
you definitely have insights into almost every part of the business. And so, really, when it comes to strategic planning, strategic decisions, like that should not get overlooked. And that is definitely why I always push for us to get a seat at the table, because we're not just that CRM, Salesforce admin that I think a lot of people
Fair
kind of
enough.
think of us as. So much more.
Absolutely. I would even say when I structure go-to-market teams or revenue teams of companies, I would say I always try to get revenue operations. I say, look, this should be a VP role on the same level than the others. Even so, it's a supporting role. I guess this VP of revenue operations is going to be the highest VP in the room because they hold systems, structures, processes, and strategy and data. And right, the system admin is more or less a person who implements this what has been structured. Their revenue operations is the business and technical and data person who structures the requirements, who is the filter, who what should be built into the system and what actually pays into the strategy, right? And it's a very complex role, and it's very important because, and I see this quite often, the companies use revenue operation just for fixing things. But when we have set the company or brought them to a certain level, the interesting part of revenue operations is that they optimize each part of the journey, right? Get the 2-3% out of the business, which has such an enormous effect, right? If you get 3% more efficiency into each funnel step, a little bit 2% more performance out of it because you build a better process or you enable the team better by optimizing the system. The effect is enormous, and if you don't do it, all right, then you don't really get the transparency. So I think that's nice. I never heard this in the last podcasts. So I think this is a very fair misconception I see quite often. And I think the companies can do much better there. So coming to my last question, what advice would you give companies who have no revenue operations yet, or who operate revenue operations just on or just started with revenue operations? What advice would you give them or give them how they can do this operate in a better way?
Good question. Start early, or start as early as possible, I would say. I think companies that really are going to streamline their processes and have really tight processes, the earlier you start, the better. And I would say make sure that you bring in kind of what you said, like a strong leader, ideally, maybe somebody on the VP level, equal to your counterparts in sales, marketing, and CS. So you get a seat at the table, and then you can really push the strategic initiatives forward. But I think starting early and really bringing in somebody with that mindset who's thinking marketing, sales, CS alignment, partnerships alignment, and not just these siloed ways. And I think you're already in a really, really good position. And I would also really encourage companies, going off of the last point we spoke about, is just to think outside of the technology. So think of RevOps more than just like that Salesforce or CRM admin, but really the forefront of planning, right? So planning in terms of target setting, goal setting, budgets, but also capacity planning. When do we hire salespeople? At what time? When do we hire the supportive role solution consultants and also CS? So think of these leaders. I would encourage the management team at other companies to think of leaders who have that mindset of alignment and start as early as possible. That would be my advice.
Perfect. Chris, thank you very much for your time and sharing your amazing learnings and knowledge. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. And really, thank you for having me. And yeah, nice being here.
See you soon.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.